And I'll do that by saying welcome to everybody who's tuned in online to another weekly one of our security seminars. And if you've tuned in early, you heard us talking about them just now. I'm thrilled to have Steve Lipner as our speaker today. He has one of the more illustrious careers in cybersecurity and one of the deep thinkers in the field. It's only partially captured by his bio on our website, but you can find others online. He has been involved in so many efforts as we look back over security, including some development for work related to the Rainbow series, for trusted computing, including architect for the Microsoft Trusted Computing Initiative, and worked there for several years helping to secure their products. He's currently the executive director of SafeCode, which is a nonprofit that's focused on better software, on software assurance. And he has so many other things, accolades, and other issues related to his past. I'm not going to spend more time other than to say it's a real honor to have him here joining us. And he's going to talk to us about a recent National Academy study that he chaired on the future of encryption. And so without further ado, well, actually, there is some further ado. Let me just state to all the attendees, if you have a question or comment for Steve, please post it in the Q&A. Don't put it in the chat. What's in the chat is the link to that National Academy's report, but your questions and answers should go in the Q&A. And with that, Steve, please take it away.
Smaff, thank you very much. I assume what do we queue up the Q&A and then you run through them at the end.
That's the usual way. If you want to take it between, we can, but I would say complete your talk first.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Spat, for that great introduction. I feel like, you know, there are fewer of us every day, it seems, who have been around since the early days of cybersecurity, and it's fun and an honor to be back to Purdue, even if only virtually, and have a chance to talk with folks. I'm gonna, as I said, this is talk is based on a study for the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine that I chaired. I'll talk a little more about the study and its relation to the talk in a minute. By way of introduction, I think if you're interested in cybersecurity, you're following the press. I guess you read the New York Times a week ago, Monday maybe. You know that encryption is really a hot topic even outside the confines of the cybersecurity specialist world. Most of that is about the potential impact of quantum computers, and a quantum computer is one that uses the special properties of entangled photons. I think I'm not able to go much deeper into that, but the key thing is that it can appear to be solving problems in parallel in a way that speeds up some computation. And in particular, Shor's algorithm for a quantum computer developed by an MIT professor named Shor offers much faster way of factoring large numbers, and that in turn threatens the public key crypto systems that are fundamental to a lot of things, including essentially all of internet security. And so the threat, especially of quantum, has led to need for and creation of what are called post-quantum encryption algorithms that don't rely on factoring large integers or on discrete logarithms, but other mathematical principles to provide public key cryptography that can't be broken by a quantum computer with Shor's algorithm, or we hope they can't. And with the emergence of those post-quantum algorithms, then there's the small matter of changing all of the internet over to the new standards, new software, new systems for managing and distributing and storing and revoking keys. There aren't any quantum computers today, to the best of our knowledge. Nobody's running Shor's algorithm to break encrypted data, but it's not clear when we'll have quantum computers, but there's a threat to stored data. Talk a little more about that in a few slides, I think, but yeah, just do it now. Short version is that if somebody captures data and stores it now, and then has a quantum computer in the future, they can go back and break the encryption, and that's a threat to data whose secrecy is supposed to be long-lived. In addition to the quantum computer sort of focused interest, which is a primary source of urgency, a lot of other things. And just for example, policy issues related to law enforcement access to encrypted information, and that pops up in the press every, I don't know, year or two. Recent issue that got a lot of press, I think, was the terrorist incident in, I believe, Santa Barbara a few years ago, and the FBI attempt to getting access to an encrypted cell phone. And so should law enforcement have ways of accessing encrypted information? Cryptocurrency is another issue that has an impact on government regulation of finances and basically knowledge of the economy. So a lot of different things associated with encryption. Whoop, it's tried down. The study in question was tasked by the U.S. intelligence community, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, to the National Academies of Science and Engineering to conduct a study that they called The Future of Encryption. It was motivated in part by the quantum computer threat, and I suspect that may have been a major consideration in actually asking for the study, but the scope wasn't limited to the quantum threat and responding to it. It was really, what's the future for encryption? What's the future for decryption of adversaries' information? How are things likely to proceed and evolve, and what are going to be the issues dealing with encrypted information in the future? The deliverable for the study was a set of scenarios, and we'll go more into that idea of scenarios in a few slides. But the important thing is that we were requested to produce a range of plausible futures rather than a prediction of what the future would look like. And we were really just asked to look what might happen, not how will you solve that. Study wasn't tasked to produce recommendations. We didn't produce recommendations. There are findings which we'll go into, and you can sort of infer a recommendation from many of the findings. One thing, this presentation is based on the study report, which you have the link to, but it's my own perspective. This isn't a presentation on behalf of or endorsed by the National Academies or the Director of National Intelligence or anybody else but me. So just for that, for what it's worth, that's what you're getting. A word about the study committee and the study process. National Academy does a lot of studies for the government and for nonprofit organizations. They have a playbook for what they call a consensus study that involves assembling a committee of people with diverse backgrounds. Spaff and I have been on other studies together in the past. This particular study committee had 14 members, some sort of very prestigious cryptographers, both from industry and from the academic community, system security people and security experts. I guess they put me into that category. I am definitely not a cryptographer or a cryptography researcher, as well as policy experts, attorneys, people who are steeped in law and intelligence law, and then intelligence community veterans, as well as an expert on the scenario-based methodology that the intelligence community was interested in. The committee ran from September 2020 to October 21, and if you think of that, you know it ran during the pandemic. It ran only by Zoom meetings. We never had a full committee meeting. And at the end of October 2021, we had a draft report that went out for the National Academy's peer review and vetting process. Came back to us in the spring of 2022. We revised it and released it for publication in the summer of last year, and the final briefings, including a public briefing, which may be findable online, were done in September of 22. Was an unusual. The full list of committee members, as well as the report outline, are included at the end of the presentation. Was sort of a strange committee that never met face to face. I think it functioned well, but it seems to me like you sort of lose something doing things that way. The statement of task, that's sort of the statement of work for a contract for a study with the National Academies, was, as I alluded to identify potential scenarios over the next 10 to 20 years for the balance between encryption and decryption. What makes the cryptographic protection of information stronger and more reliable, more assured? What makes the cryptographic protection of information weaker or less assured and could be used to decrypt an adversary's encrypted information? Assess the national security implications of the scenarios, and then identify options for responding and implications for the intelligence community in the future. So it's really pretty broad, a major technical component, but also sort of a policy and business strategy component as well. I think I had this on the previous slide. I don't think I mentioned it. The study was unclassified. The members weren't cleared for the study, didn't have access to any classified information. All the presentations to the committee by outsiders were open, were noticed on the Academy website, and open to the public if people wanted to join. Now, I don't know what the range of people on this seminar are. So let me just talk for a minute about encryption. It's the science of transforming information using an algorithm and a key. The algorithms assumed to be widely known, essentially public, and the information is supposed to be unreadable as long as the key, or in the case of public key encryption, the decryption key is protected. And that's sort of cryptography, the basics of what encryption is. There are two kinds in wide use: symmetric or secret key cryptography that is used for bulk or payload encryption. The data that flows, I guess, for example, on the Zoom link, is encrypted with symmetric cryptography under a key between your web browser and a Zoom server. The symmetric encryption is based on complex data manipulations that are hard to undo without the key. And there's not really, there are mathematical techniques involved in devising, analyzing, and attempting to break symmetric cryptography, but it's not so much a mathematical problem as it is an engineering or innovative problem, inventing new kinds of manipulations that resist attacks. Public examples of symmetric cryptography include AES, the old DES data encryption standard, and a new lightweight encryption algorithm, symmetric algorithm, that was recently standardized by NIST. Public key cryptography is very different. Public key cryptography is based on mathematical problems and the problem of NP completeness. You want a problem that's easy to compute, but hard or almost impossible to undo, to reverse. And public key cryptography is based on hard mathematical problems. Factoring huge integers is an example. Discrete logarithms is an example. Finding points on an elliptic curve is an example. The new post-quantum algorithms are based on finding shortest paths in mathematical lattices. Public key cryptography algorithms tend to be slow, certainly slower than symmetric, and so they're used for key exchange or key negotiation and for authentication of blocks of information. You use something called a secure hash to get a small number, basically, or a blob of data that can then be encrypted to achieve authentication. You don't use public key for large quantities of information. And public key cryptography, those mathematical problems are what Shor's algorithm solves. And so all the fuss is about trying to find new public key algorithms that are not susceptible to attack by Shor's algorithm. Back to our Zoom link. when you connected to the Zoom site, there was a public key exchange that went on once to authenticate the site to your Zoom application, probably not to authenticate you to the Zoom server. That was done with a password after the encryption was negotiated. And then the public key exchange with the Zoom site established the symmetric key that's using something like AES to protect the exchange between the server and your Zoom application. Symmetric cryptography is not viewed as heavily threatened by quantum computers. There's a search algorithm known as Grover's algorithm that halves the time to do an exhaustive search for a symmetric key, but that's nowhere near as dramatic as the impact of Shor's algorithm on public key, which basically solves the problem in polynomial time. So AES, for example, you double the key length, and you're okay even in the presence of quantum computers. Talk a little about the way we did the study. This is the futurist scenario planning kind of approach to thinking about things that might happen. And as I said, this was requested in the statement of tasks to the academies. And so what you do is think about the problem space, encryption taken pretty broadly in our case. You identify a set of drivers, key factors, key considerations that will drive the way the world evolves in the future. And then once you've got your drivers identified, you identify for each of them sort of two end states, two opposing states, high and low, good and bad. I'll give you some concrete examples in the next slide. And those identify worlds. And typically you do three orthogonal drivers, and those give you 8 possible worlds, high and low. You identify some interesting scenarios or interesting looking worlds, and then you think about what might happen if those things reflected the world of reality in the future. And you document your scenarios, and then you think about their implications in terms of risks, opportunities, future actions to mitigate the risks. Let me be a little more concrete, and maybe that'll help. Thinking about the future of encryption, we came pretty quickly to 3 orthogonal drivers of the future. The first was scientific advances. The rate at which the science of encryption evolves, and the rate at which new technologies can emerge and be made ready for use, and the states of scientific advances might be either predictable, ho-hum, next year's like this year, or disruptive. Something exciting happens to make a new breakthrough, change the fate of the world. So your quantum computer, a quantum computer in 3 years would be disruptive, for example. Society and governance, how governments, policymakers, economies, populations interact in general and in particular in ways that overlap the encryption and the operations of the intelligence community. And for those we decided that the two end states were fragmented and global. Fragmented, governments sort of at loggerheads with each other, populations, lots of disruption and controversy, even within countries, even within populations, lots of interest groups. Global, a much more maybe peaceful, or at least maybe ordered, maybe cohesive state of society within countries and internationally. And so those are the two society and governance states. And then systems, which is how for the problem of encryption, how you build the systems that use cryptography. Chaotic systems are sort of slammed together. Encryption is used, but people don't necessarily know what they're doing when they use it. Systems are built in sort of a chaotic fashion. I suppose I could say you move fast and break things might be a symptom of chaotic. And mature at the opposite end says basically you get quality, you get predictability, you get robustness, you get security. So those are the three drivers that we identified. And then the next thing we did was to dig down into each of those drivers to say, okay, what are the specific attributes of each of the endpoints of each of the drivers. I've got 3 slides to talk about each of the drivers. And we'll start in same order, scientific advances, then society and governance, and then systems. And for scientific advances, predictably, no quantum computers. What you see is what you get. People keep researching, but nothing ever comes out. When I think about quantum computers, I sometimes think about nuclear fusion. And I remember reading in Popular Science magazine decades and decades ago about how nuclear fusion was soon going to be the power source for the country or the world, that was going to be clean and limitless. Not so much. So quantum computers might turn out to be sort of the nuclear fusion of computing. Or, quantum in a disruptive world, you might see unforeseen improvements that make quantum computers feasible, fast, available. On another predictable advance is a suite of quantum-resistant encryption algorithms. We know that that's predictable because actually NIST is in the process, the National Institute of Standards and Technology is in the process of standardizing quantum-resistant encryption algorithms. They've just released their first draft standards within the last month or so. And so that's on track. A cryptographic development that would be disruptive, we don't know, we understand that factoring, for example, is a hard problem, but there's no mathematical proof. There's nothing that says for sure how hard it is. And so somebody might make a cryptanalytic breakthrough that made factoring easy. Not likely, but disruptive if it happened. And then the final thing in the scientific advances space techniques for computing on encrypted data. We have those today. They're in some use. The usage is limited, and people use them only in specialized scenario. On the other hand, new applications, new breakthroughs might cause a frenzy of attention, something like an increase in the use of cryptocurrencies. Internet use might be social media or advertising might be transformed by the wide adoption of computing on encrypted data. Basically, I can share with my friends, but the social media operators can't target my dialogue for advertising. So those are the endpoints of scientific advances. And I have to go a little faster because I'm just tracking time and slide count. In society and governance, fragmented might carry over into information technology, data processing. Government might demand local data storage. They might demand local processing. You can have a cloud service, but you have to put your server in our country. Governments might demand access. They might limit privacy. Citizens might mistrust governments in ways that would pose internal and external challenges for intelligence community. People might have security clearances but not be trustworthy. That can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on the scenario, but in general, it's a symptom of fragmentation and localization. You can encrypt, but you encrypt with my algorithm that's approved by my government. And similarly, global is just sort of the opposite. A unified internet and strong encryption internet wide. Citizens trust their governments, and perhaps that enables solutions for intelligence community that are privacy preserving and people believe in, and international standards. Those are some things that are examples of a global sort of outcome on society and governance. We talked in depth about law enforcement access to encryption. I mentioned that earlier. There's a text box on that. We talked about the impact of cryptocurrencies on government regulation of finance. And then the last of the drivers is systems, and chaotic. Customers cope with the security they're delivered. Vendors prioritize features and performance over security. Slow progress in security tools and processes, and most developers don't know about security as a part of engineering IT systems and could care less. The opposite, mature. Customers insist on secure products, and the vendors hear them and view security as something that is really must have and are willing to invest to make that happen. You get significant market progress, and implied in that is that developers, engineers, people who build systems have broad, deep knowledge of what it means to build a secure system. As the committee talked about the systems driver, it became evident that was really an important consideration, even with really nice, strong cryptography. crummy systems practices can undermine that. So now we've got 3 drivers, 2 states of each. That gives us 8 worlds, 8 potential worlds. And this is just a diagram of what those 8 look like. We gave each a number, and now the challenge. Typically, you'll do 3 scenarios across the 8 worlds, and so the question was to pick the 3 scenarios based on the states of those drivers. And the ones we picked were scenarios 2 with disruptive scientific advances, fragmented society and governance, and mature systems practices. Scenario 5 with predictable scientific advances, fragmented society and governance, and chaotic systems practices. And scenario 6 with disruptive scientific advances, fragmented society and governance, and chaotic and chaotic system practices. You'd normally explore each state of each driver somewhere. And you notice that we said fragmented, fragmented, fragmented. And maybe that's a perspective on the way the world looked to the committee. Maybe it's a statement that the fragmented cases were more interesting as well as more realistic. We do get a lot of variation amongst scenarios from the choices of systems and scientific advances, but we did feel it was more appropriate to explore 3 scenarios with fragmented science, society, and governance. So now I'm going to go through the worlds and scenarios, and just do that. Try to stay on track for time here. So our futurist encouraged us to give each scenario a name. I'm not prepared to defend the names, but the names are in the report. Scenario 2 with mature systems practices and disruptive scientific advances. The scenario features a breakthrough in quantum computing. So there's a threat to public key algorithms posed by the availability of quantum computers. But because of the transition to mature systems practices, the effect of the quantum computing is balanced out. Basically, defense against attacks on encryption has the advantage, and that makes reliance on other things like human intelligence much more of a priority for the intelligence community. Internationally, you find fragmentation. That's what the scenario is, and in this case, that means you wind up with multiple blocks, each with its own preferred encryption standard. But the breakthroughs are the breakthroughs, and so they all have access. They all have access to the post-quantum standards, and we don't restrict mature systems practices to any particular country, any particular player. So the defense still has the advantage, although the seams between different encryption standards obviously provide a target for intelligence collection. The second scenario is called the known world, only more so, and maybe that sort of feels like where we are. Predictable scientific advances, no quantum computer, no breakthroughs, and with chaotic systems, no breakthroughs in secure system development. So breaches are common. Everybody catches up because technology isn't changing fast enough, and it's an attacker's world. Lots of buggy systems, lots of buggy implementations of software. Even though there's a transition to the post-quantum encryption algorithms, that transition is slow and painful. And meanwhile, it's the vulnerability to the weak club. It's just the standards fragment, and attack, but because of the lack of progress, attacks on systems are the province of government and private actors, large and small. If that sort of sounds like the known world, only more so, that's the source of the name of this scenario. And then finally, what we called colony collapse, which has a disruptive scientific advances, but still chaotic system development, still a fragmented society and governance. And this scenario is sort of a reminder that you don't need to have a quantum computer to have a bad day. There's no quantum computer, but there's a breakthrough in factoring, plus the problems of chaotic systems put information at risk, even without the quantum computer. The advances in scientific advances provide capabilities for computing on encrypted data, but because of fragmented society and governments, people don't trust it. And so all those things wind up leading to an offensive advantage and a continuing stream of attacks. We identified common trends across the three scenarios, including the ones shown here: weakening of alliances. Basically, who do you trust? Who can you rely on for help? Challenges in recruiting talented employees that come both from, sort of lack of emphasis on systems and on scientific advances in education, plus the fact that, with fragmented society and governments, how can you trust employees? Who do you trust? And fragmentation leads to a multitude of targets, not only from the degradation of standards and common markets, but also from the diversity of systems that just result from fragmentation, meaning you've got a lot of different intelligence targets to try to collect against. And we also identified common preparations across the scenarios. Try to get to mature systems. I guess the comment there is definitely a good idea if we can do it. Figure out the things that the United States can do to provide high quality and trustworthy staff, both for the intelligence community and in general. Try to limit fragmentation. Again, sort of nice if we can manage to do it, and focus on maintaining and sustaining alliances with other countries. Now, I said at the beginning that we identified some key findings that sort of imply directions beyond the common preparations. And so I'm just going to go through those. First, the general findings, and then specifically for the intelligence community. Kinetic systems undermine the security of encryption. We pounded on that because the more we look, the more important it is. That's a high-level finding. There are detailed findings in the report that go beyond that in terms of things that ought to be done in education, in research, to try to build the quality of systems. That was probably a big recommendation. Emphasis on education and engineering, and emphasis on education in science and the ability to make scientific advances as well. Fragmented society and governance can degrade the security of systems because people don't trust the things that they can get that would otherwise be good, and because organizations are not trusted. So fragmented society and governance tends to degrade things. Technical talents in short supply. That's back to the education point. We thought the mathematical breakthrough is getting less attention, certainly less attention than the threat of a quantum computer, and it's something that people ought to be keeping an eye on, even as they worry about quantum computers. Computing on encrypted data is something where there's been a lot of progress made. It's a hot research area. It can improve security and privacy, and if with trust, if people trust it, an important positive contribution to the security of society. And then final point, with more adversary nations making advances, the advantage of the intelligence community in encryption and decryption is at risk, and so that's something we wanted to point out. And for the intelligence community in particular, we said that encryption was going to continue to be important. That early detection of trends, our breaks emerging is one country getting to a much higher standard in doing mature systems than another. Those are trends that are going to be important, and the intelligence community needs to watch out for them. May or may not be easy to detect those things. Could you develop a quantum computer in secret? We actually have a text box about that. Plan for alternate outcomes, as well as trying to detect them. Make the stakes associated with encryption, with things like mature systems, with things like education, clear to policymakers. And for the intelligence community, it may be necessary to adopt new personnel policies to get access to more capable employees or talent in the encryption space. So those are our findings, both for the intelligence community and for the general issues of the future of encryption. And that basically goes through the report. Two additional slides. One of them is the committee members. I was the chair, Mark Lowenthal, who retired from CIA after a long career, was the vice chair, and then the other members, as I said, a variety of organizations and backgrounds. And the report outline basically pretty much followed it with the presentation. but you have access to the report. There's the URL, but it's also in the chat. So with that, let's probably about 9 minutes left. Let's go to questions.
Thank you, Steve. We have one question, which I'll read to you. Does the industry have the hardware and technology that can implement Shor's algorithm already, or is it still in the making?
So to implement Shor's algorithm would require a quantum computer, and there are quantum computers around now, but the power or the capability of a quantum computer is measured in something called qubits, quantum bits, and they're all quantum computers operate in a variety of hostile environments, low temperature and very noise sensitive. So the quantum computers we see now are in the range of tens of hundreds of qubits, and I believe those are what are called noisy qubits. So then you have to apply error correction on top of that. To run Shor's algorithm, I believe you're talking about thousands of qubits or millions of noisy qubits. So we're a long way from there with the systems that are publicly known. Could somebody have a quantum computer in the basement that they're grinding away with? I don't. We certainly don't know that. I don't know that. Seems unlikely, but if they are, they haven't told me. So no Shor's algorithm at the moment, to the best of anybody's knowledge. Close this window.
I think, Steve, it's entirely likely that some countries, if they were to make a breakthrough advance and develop one of these, they wouldn't advertise the existence of it for a while, because they would want to take advantage of, as you noted, the fact we haven't made as much progress replacing some of our algorithms with quantum safe algorithms yet.
Yeah, one of the things I had in my notes that I skipped over, this whole matter of stored data. If you have data, government, national security, intelligence data that you want to keep secret for 50 years, which is certainly not unheard of. Then if you want to keep it secret for 50 years and somebody creates a quantum computer that can run Shor's algorithm 20 years from now, you have to go back in time and have encrypted that with that information with post quantum algorithms 30 years ago. Because otherwise, if somebody's collecting it now or was collecting it for the last 30 years and gets just started 30 years ago and gets their quantum computer in 20 years from now, then your 50-year secrecy period is at risk. So we've got the post-quantum algorithms. They're starting to emerge. We don't yet have the standards to plug them into SSL, or TLS, although people are experimenting with that. But it's gonna be a slog. And if it is possible to build a quantum computer of a scale to run Shor's algorithm, then there's significant potentially a significant period of vulnerability.
Yeah, I would recommend for anybody who's listening in on this, who is interested in that aspect, there's a classic case in the literature called the Venona papers, the Venona ciphers.
Yeah, yeah.
Where information was collected from Soviet nuclear spies that was not readable at the time it was collected, but as computing advanced into later years and more data, there were breakthroughs that were made. It's an interesting story, longer than we can go into here, but you can find Venona, Venona, if you do a search. One more question, Steve, here is, which of the following outcomes from the study do you think is most likely for the future?
I wasn't, the committee was definitely not supposed to answer that question, and we didn't. I think there's, all right, so let's take it dimension by dimension. I think, I mean, there's sort of a message in the fact that we picked 3 fragmented scenarios. Okay. And so, that's the way things are sort of looking at the moment. It could change in 20 years, but that's the way things are looking at the moment, at least to me. As far as scientific advances, I think we're going to see some scientific advances. I'm not going to bet on whether we're going to see a quantum computer. I'm not going to bet on whether we're going to see a factoring breakthrough. That's possibly less likely. I think breakthroughs and advances in computing on encrypted data, those are probably more likely. That's an area that people see a lot of opportunity in, and so we may see something there. And then as far as systems, systems is my area. I've been working in it, for 50 years, 53 years, something like that. And I'm ever hopeful. I think that the things, that we talk about this in the report, the cybersecurity executive order from the Biden administration in 2021 that told vendors, hey, start to apply best practices. That's not everything everybody could do. It's not everything everybody was hoping for when I started this business in this business in the 70s and 80s. But I think people are under pressure to get serious, and so I'm hoping that we'll see progress in that space, if not to fully mature, at least a lot better than we are today.
Great, and I think saying which is most probable is, if you could do that reliably, placing some well-timed stock purchases might be a great idea. Thank you for that. I had a request about the Venona.
Yeah, I did that. I put it in. Yeah, you did it, and so did I.
Yep. So we've got that for anyone who's interested. Again, I would recommend the report, like most National Academies reports, is well sourced, well written, has references, and is worth reading if you're interested in the topic. The National Academies turns out a number of reports every year in a wide variety of subjects, where they gather distinguished experts from a variety of fields to analyze problems, generally at the request of government agencies, Congress in particular, and produce these definitive, nonpartisan studies. And if you're interested in quantum or cryptography, this is a great place to start or continue your education. And as was noted by Steve Mascarelli, there are some ongoing presentations on quantum safe algorithms and the future of quantum that you can see here. NIST also has publications. This is an area for quite a bit of study if any of you are interested. I'll also mention Purdue not only has several faculty who are working in cryptography, we also have a group that's working in quantum computing. And so we have some local resources if you're interested. But most of all, thank you, Steve, for joining us. It is always a delight to see you. And we very much appreciate this and other things you've been doing for the community. As you said, finding it difficult to retire. I hope that continues to be the case. Your expertise is very special and very important for the field.
Thank you, Spaff. It was fun getting back to Purdue virtually. I still hope to get back there for real at some point. Travel sort of up and down this year, but it's great to have this connection. It's great to be back, and great to have a chance to share the work. As to the encryption, the report, Spaff mentioned, it does have an executive summary if you don't want to wade through the whole thing, and the New York Times front page article a week ago Monday talking about post quantum, also an interesting, very lay oriented resource. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will also mention all the National Academy's reports are available to read for free. You don't have to purchase them, although if you want a hard copy, you can purchase one, but they are available for free. And with that, we'll close out another week of seminar. And please join us next week when Masters of MITRE Corporation will be talking about cyber risk analysis for critical infrastructure, again at 4:30 on Wednesday. And in the interim, everybody have a good week. And thank you again, Steve.
Thanks, Pat.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye.